I mean, her story just went all across the country about the Marine coming home and stuff. And she went, and she was guest of honor at the banquet that night. And this picture here is when she goes in, and I've got pictures on there was another Saturday Evening Post article that appeared and talked about her huge celebration and stuff. But here she's eating, she walks in and she spies the centerpieces of the flowers. For that, you know. And then another time she sees the cake, the anniversary cake, and before they talk about her being up to her nostrils in it before, you know, they could get her back for it. So, but they brought her then back to Camp Pendleton, and that's where she ended up living out her days. And she they would take her out for change of command ceremonies, local parades. She was a member of the Girl Scouts. They made her an honorary member. The Del Mar had 2 special race days for her over the years and stuff. And she had 3 colts at Camp Pendleton. She had, and unfortunately, they were all gelded. And I know. And then she had a filly, but the filly died when she was a month old. So unfortunately, that didn't. But her 3 colts, 2 of them left the stables, but one of them lived out his days there. And her colts' names were Fearless, Dauntless, and Chesty, after Chesty Puller. And so she, in 1957, she was promoted to staff sergeant the first time. And then in 59, she was, again, they changed the pay scale, so she was eligible for another promotion. Every time they can promote this horse, they do it. So, I mean, they just loved the ceremonies, you know, for her. And so the commandant of the Marine Corps came to Camp Pendleton and promoted her himself. He put on her, he's the one that gave her staff sergeant stripes, and there was a parade of 1,700 Marines that served with her. And they had a full 17-gun salute, and 2 of her, you know, Dauntless and Fearless were there by her side. Both of them were already privates enlisted into the Marines. And it was a great story. And she retired in November of 1960 at Camp Pendleton with full military honors. And in lieu of retired pay, she got all the hay and carrots and everything that, you know, she wanted. So, but they loved her here. And when she got to Camp Pendleton, it was an order that you could not put anything heavier than her blanket on her back. And so they just never used her for anything else other than that. And the great thing in the parades and stuff is that if she outranked you, you couldn't, you know, lead her or do anything because she outranked you, and so you couldn't give her orders. So, you know, so it was the genuineness and the innocence of all these Marines, you know, just the way they treated her. It was just a wonderful, wonderful time to see how they would, you know, it was just lovely, and looking at.
My uncle was in the Korean War as a Marine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and in fact, he used to say, they lined you up, and they would go by and say, okay, you're a Marine, you're a Marine, you're a Marine, you're a Marine. And they took all the big guys. My uncle was 6'4". Oh. So that's how he ended up a Marine. Oh, you know, he got drafted, and then he was told, you're a Marine, and that was it. He got shipped to Korea. And so I'll ask him if he...
Ask him if he knows about Sgt. Reckless.
He spent a couple of years over there, yeah. So.
And it's tough. And so she retired in 1960 and lived out her days at Camp Pendleton.
So how long did she live to?
She lived till she was 20. She died in May of 1968. She had arthritis in her back and a left leg, and she fell into a barbed wire fence and was injured. And they tried to help her. I mean, anybody who saw War Horse, you know, in that barbed wire fence scene, I couldn't watch. It was just terrible. But you know, she died from those injuries, and she was buried with full military honors. And
at Pendleton?
At Pendleton.
Okay.
And they do have a headstone for her at the step stables, but if you blink, you miss it. You know, and I've had people call me that actually rode at the stables and were stationed at Camp Pendleton for years and had never seen or never knew about Reckless. And you don't know about her. And it's amazing because when you hear her story, you think, how could I not know about this wonderful, wonderful horse? And I do believe it's because Andy Geer, who was her biggest fan and really her advocate, he wrote the book in '55, and his last article in the Saturday Evening Post also appeared in '55, but then he died of cancer in '57. And he had sold the rights to the film, actually, and it was going to be made into a movie, and for some reason it was never made into a film. And even John Wayne wanted to do a movie on the Outpost Wars and have her featured, you know, which would have been so cool. But it never came to pass, so I just think it's because she didn't have an advocate. Even though her book was very popular back in the '50s and everything, she just fell into the, off the pages of history.